The wind on Tertia IV didn't blow so much as hum. A deep, resonant vibration that tickled the spine like an ancient voice trying to sing through the bones of the world. Elias Wren tugged his collar up to block the grit, only for the fabric to slap him in the face with the next gust. The sand here was magnetic, literally. He'd already lost 2 knives and his field calmed to the rocks, and if the planet had its way, it would keep his dignity too. "Stay close," Commander Sira Velshara said from ahead, her voice slicing clean through the wind. She didn't look back, of course. She never did. Probably didn't need to, Elari combat senses, or some Jedi sixth sense for knowing when her idiot human escort was lagging behind, trying to fish sand out of his boots for the 5th time. "Right, close, like close or close enough for you to catch me if I get eaten by another mudworm." Elias jogged forward, no response, not even a twitch of those pointed ears. He sighed. "I'm beginning to think you don't appreciate my survival-based humor." They trudged along a jagged ravine lit by blue bioluminescent moss. Above, fractured clouds pulsed with distant lightning. It would have been beautiful if not for the minor detail that half the planet was still technically a combat zone. Unofficially, of course. Officially, this was a diplomatic security operation. Very peaceful, very boring. Definitely not crawling with mercenary scavengers, rogue droids, or trigger-happy leftover separatists. "You speak too often when silence would serve better," Sierra said at last. "That's fair," Elias said. "But in my defense, silence doesn't laugh at my jokes." That earned him something. Not a laugh exactly, but a subtle hitch in her pace. It might have been a chuckle, or a sneeze, or maybe her internal kill-count processor just skipped a beat. Hard to say. They arrived at a narrow ridge overlooking the remains of an ancient satellite relay, their first overnight checkpoint. Elias dropped his pack with exaggerated relief. Finally, a pile of broken tech and flammable moss. Romantic. Sierra scanned the perimeter, her long ears twitching slightly as she listened to the whine of the wind. Her armor, sleek, silvery, segmented in a way that made her look like she stepped out of an art museum exhibit called Warrior Elegance, glinted under the pale light. She was, in every possible way, the opposite of Elias. Where he was all nerves and running commentary, she was deliberate calm. Where he had 5 mismatched armor pieces and a duct-taped boot, she had gear so advanced it probably brushed her teeth while she slept. They set up a perimeter beacon, and Elias busied himself starting a fire. Not because they needed heat, but because flames were comforting and it gave his hands something to do other than fidget. Sierra, predictably, didn't sit. She stood sentinel on a rock, one hand resting lightly on her sidearm, eyes scanning the dark. "You ever just sit?" he asked. "I sit when strategic calculations deem it appropriate." "Right, While that's the most you answer imaginable. What about recreational sitting? You know, lounging, reclining, leaning against a tree with a good mystery novel." "I do not lounge." Elias laughed, then leaned back against a flat stone. "That's tragic. Lounging's the best part of war." Sierra raised an eyebrow. "The best part of war is when it ends." "Okay, fair, but lounging is a close second." The wind quieted for a rare moment, and in the stillness, Elias realized just how alone they were. The stars overhead blinked like old radio lights. Somewhere in the distance, a creature howled, low, guttural, and probably unfriendly. "So," he said after a pause, "when this mission's over, do you go back to your ship? Or do you turn into vapor and return to the ether?" Sierra's lip twitched. "I return to the fleet, debrief, strategize, reassess." He whistled. "Sounds like a wild vacation. You ever do anything just because you want to?" She turned her head slowly, gaze sharp. "One is a luxury, I operate on need." Elias stared at her for a moment, unsure if that was a genuine confession or another line from the Elari Handbook of Cryptic Conversation. Then, because awkward silences made him itch, he said the dumbest thing imaginable. "Half joking here, but if I proposed marriage right now, would that fall under want or need?" There was a long beat, too long. Sierra blinked once. then turned back to the horizon. I would classify that as impulse. Which you disapprove of. Which I monitor for clarity. Elias blinked. That's not a no. Sierra did not answer. He chuckled nervously. Just to be clear, I was kidding. You know gallows humor. Soldiers' bonding ritual, joke joke. Still no response. You're not going to shoot me for that, are you? I only shoot threats, she said without turning. Again, not a no, Elias muttered under his breath. The wind picked up again, rustling the moss in a way that made it look like the ground was breathing. Elias stared into the fire, now burning a soft orange-blue. For some reason, he felt like he'd just stepped into a new version of reality, one where words said as jokes were heard as something else entirely. Sierra finally stepped down from her rock, sitting cross-legged across from him. He blinked in surprise. Oh my stars, did you just lounge? I am not lounging. You are absolutely lounging, sitting even. I'm proud of you. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out a ration bar and broke it in half, offering one side across the fire. Elias took it, more touched than he'd admit. Is this an Elari engagement ritual or just a snack? Sierra looked at him, unblinking. You'll know when the ritual begins. Elias stared back, jaw slightly open, and then she bit into her ration like nothing had happened. He bit into his, a beat later, hoping she couldn't see the way his brain had just short-circuited. Stars help him, he thought. This mission might actually kill him. Or worse, he might end up falling in love with her first. Morning on Tertia IV didn't come with sunlight so much as a dimming of the night's electric blue glow. The planet's 3 moons slipped behind cloud veils, and the moss around their camp flickered from bioluminescent teal to a tired amber, like it too had given up on trying to be cheerful. Elias stretched with a groan, then immediately regretted it when his back cracked in 3 different places. I'm not saying this ground is the worst bed I've ever had, he muttered, brushing sand off his face. But if I die in my sleep tonight, I want the report to say death by terrain. Revenge recommended. Sierra was already awake, of course. She stood near the ridge edge, visor tilted toward the horizon, one hand resting lightly on her hip. She looked impossibly composed for someone who had slept under a tarp woven from heat-dampening fibers and despair. Elias watched her for a moment, rubbing his eyes. How do you do that? He called. You don't have sand in your eyebrows, that's unnatural. I sealed my armor properly, she replied without looking. Ah, right. Silly me, trusting my human eyebrows to do all the sealing work. She turned then, golden eyes flicking over him. You slept in your armor again. Technically, yes. Emotionally, no, I suffered in it. Their path today took them down into the canyon basin, where the broken ruins of a once-operational hydro-transfer station rusted beneath moss and vines. Tertia IV's surface was littered with tech relics from 5 different failed colonizations, 2 rebellions, and one brief but enthusiastic attempt to turn the planet into a galactic spa retreat. That one didn't survive the acid rains. Elias followed Sierra along a narrow trail, boots crunching on gravel that sometimes tried to escape from under him. Every so often, his proximity scanner let out a lazy chirp, faint energy signatures beneath the surface, likely power cores still humming in their sleep, too old to be dangerous and too stubborn to die. This area's unmarked, he said, not in any of the nav charts. It was buried until recently, Sierra replied. A seismic pulse last cycle unearthed it, likely why Command routed us this way. Elias looked around. I wonder what else got unearthed. The answer came sooner than expected. As they passed through an archway of collapsed piping, a shrill shriek erupted from the darkness ahead, followed by a blur of movement. Elias yelped and instinctively threw his pack at it. The creature, roughly the size of a hover drone with wings made of flickering holographic light and far too many legs, caught the pack midair, sniffed it, then skittered away. Was that a technomoth? Elias asked, wide-eyed. Possibly a scavenger hybrid, Sierra said, scanning with her gauntlet. Not aggressive. Tell that to my heart rate monitor. It is currently elevated, she noted, glancing at her readout. Thanks, Doc. They continued deeper, eventually emerging into a half-collapsed chamber with rusted machinery and panels still glowing faintly. Sierra stopped near a central console, brushing debris away. Her expression shifted, just slightly, a soft crease at the corner of her mouth. You recognize this place? She nodded. My unit passed through here once, early in the war. We lost someone important. The way she said it, flat, quiet, without elaboration, made Elia's chest ache. She didn't need to say more. He stepped forward, brushing his hand over a control panel that sparked weakly at his touch. Was it someone you cared about? Sierra paused, then said, She was my commander and my friend. I disobeyed her final order. Elias looked up, to retreat, to survive. There was nothing he could say to that. So instead he nodded and said, For what it's worth, I think your tactical miscalculation makes you very likable. A beat, then Sierra blinked once and looked away. But not before Elias saw the edge of something behind her eyes, grief maybe, or guilt. They camped again that night in the ruins. This time, Elias shared his emergency blanket, mostly to keep it from sliding into the crater nearby. Sierra declined, sitting as she always did, watching the dark like it owed her answers. So, Elias said, chewing on a nutrient bar that tasted like cardboard and regret, what's your species' stance on marriage proposals during life-threatening missions? Sierra tilted her head. You ask again. Well, it's kind of a theme now. You understand that Ilari bonding is complex. I mean, so is human dating, and we still manage to pair up between riots and election cycles. She studied him. You do not seem like someone who plans long-term. Ouch, true, but ouch. I mean no offense. You don't have to, I'm fragile. He meant it as a joke, but there was truth under the words. He wasn't built like her. She was grace and precision and command. He was a patchwork soldier with sarcasm armor and a history of quitting things just before they got serious. And yet she didn't dismiss him, didn't laugh. Instead, she said, You are consistent. That is rare. Well, I consistently try not to die. That's a talent. Sierra stood then, walked over and sat beside him. Not opposite, beside, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Elias held still, barely breathing. In our culture, she said quietly, a bond is initiated by the one who sees clearest through uncertainty. He swallowed, so if I were serious, I would not laugh. Elias turned his head. Their eyes met. For once he didn't joke. And for once she didn't deflect. Somewhere above, a drone zipped by and chirped a random wedding tune before exploding against a wall. They both blinked. Elias snorted. I swear I didn't plan that. Sierra at long last smiled. The storm rolled in without warning, as if Tertia IV had finally remembered it hated visitors and decided to start screaming again. Lightning coiled through the dark sky like a whip made of angry math, and Elias squinted against the dust that was actively trying to exfoliate his eyeballs. His helmet display fizzled for a moment, then began broadcasting something in ancient binary, possibly a weather forecast, possibly a death threat. We need shelter. He yelled over the wind, already clutching the edge of a half-buried structure poking from the sand like the spine of some long-dead beast. The entrance was wedged shut with debris, but a few kicks and one strategic insult later, the door gave way and they tumbled inside. Elias first, as was tradition. Sierra landed beside him in a crouch, drawing her weapon automatically, eyes scanning the darkness. Her long ears twitched once, like antennae tuned to tension. Elias, meanwhile, was trying to spit sand out of his mouth and dignity out of his soul. Welcome to the inside of a metal coffin, he said, coughing. Luxury suite. No windows, no view, all ambience. She activated a shoulder light and swept the beam across the chamber. Rusted consoles blinked faintly in the dark, power barely clinging to life. Old command chairs stood like forgotten sentinels. It had once been a field control station, probably during the early years of the war, judging by the markings. Structural integrity is stable, she said. Minimal radiation, acceptable for temporary use. You say that like you're reviewing a hotel on a budget travel app, Elias muttered, brushing off his chest plate. 3 stars. Wouldn't recommend for honeymoons. She gave him a look. Would you? He blinked. Would I what? Recommend it for a honeymoon. Are you asking because you're curious? Or because we're still pretending that marriage joke was a one-time thing? She tilted her head. Your responses suggest it may not have been a joke. Well, yeah, I mean no. I mean look, my brain isn't fully sand-free yet, okay? But for what it's worth, I haven't proposed to anyone else in the last 24 hours. That's commitment, right? Instead of answering, she moved to the console and connected her gauntlet. The room lit with weak pulses of blue as systems came online. Maps, logs, a flickering holofeed from a long-dead surveillance network. Elias stepped beside her, watching as footage of old battlefields played across the dust-covered display. A younger Sierra appeared in one frame, her armor newer, her stance even stiffer. You've been here before, he said. I commanded a forward unit stationed in this sector. He glanced at the screen. You were intense. I still am. No argument here. But back then, you looked like you were about to bite someone if they misquoted a directive. They often did. He grinned. And now, what happens if I misquote something? Her eyes didn't leave the feed. You tell jokes instead. The feed blinked off. A low hum rose from somewhere beneath the floor, reactor cycling to life, maybe stirred by the power input. Or something older. Elias felt the vibration in his boots. That's not terrifying at all, he muttered. Sierra scanned her interface. Residual heat signatures, possibly dormant machines. Oh good, Elias said. Sleeping killer robots. My second least favorite type. What's the first? The awake ones. The floor trembled again. Then, with a deep metallic groan, part of the wall slid open, revealing a side chamber. Inside was a large pod, part cryogenic, part datacore, and all mystery. The markings were neither human nor Ilari. Sierra frowned. Not from either faction. Could be from the builders, Elias said, stepping forward. Tertia's first settlers, pre-drift colonists. There's rumors they were experimenting with hybrid cognition systems, tried to combine AI with, well, themselves. Cyber-organic interface, dangerous. And yet here we are poking it anyway. Sierra examined the pod's console, translating the glyphs with slow precision. It's locked with a biometric key, not ours. Elias hesitated. Try mine. She glanced sideways. That's not advisable. Yeah, but when have I ever been advisable? Before she could stop him, Elias placed his hand against the pad. The lights inside flickered, then stabilized. A low chime sounded. The pod hissed, pressure equalizing. The top slid open slowly. Inside lay a humanoid figure, clearly not alive. More sculpture than body. Its chest cavity was filled with interwoven circuitry and crystalline fibers, like someone had grown a motherboard inside a ribcage. Its eyes were closed. A shimmer of data flickered behind its temples. Elias swallowed. Okay, that's not creepy. Sierra studied the interface. It was a memory vessel, designed to carry a living mind across generations. The subject is dormant, which means it may still contain personality data, experience, possibly emotions. So you're saying we just found a long-dead alien brain in a box. With a heartbeat. Elias took a step back. Great. Just when I thought today couldn't get any weirder. The lights dimmed. Then a voice, soft and layered like two people speaking at once, echoed from the pod. Identity confirmed. Welcome back, Velshara. Sierra froze. Elias looked from the pod to her. Wait, you. Why does the haunted voice know your name? Sierra's voice was quiet. My mother was part of the Tertia experiments, before she defected to the Dominion, before I was born. They left the memory vault just before dawn, though dawn on Tertia IV was a generous word for the slow, glowing sigh that passed for morning. The dust had settled. The storm had moved on. The pod's voice no longer echoed through the ruins, and Elias couldn't decide if he felt more unnerved or comforted. Not many people met the memory of their partner's dead relative and lived to joke about it. Not many people got that far into anything with Sierra Velshara. She hadn't said a word since they exited the structure. That worried Elias, but he knew better than to poke her brain too soon after it had been loaded with ancestral backup files. So he kept walking beside her, silently rehearsing how to ask, "Do you want to talk about the ancient AI ghost that knew your name?" In a tactful and supportive way. Instead, what came out was, "So. Was that like meeting your mom's hard drive?" Sierra did not laugh, not even a twitch. But she also didn't activate her weapon and vaporize him, so he counted that as emotional progress. She was one of the first split, Sierra finally said as they crossed the ravine toward their extraction point. When the Elari broke away from the old systems, they used to experiment on themselves to evolve, combine machine and mind. She must have uploaded her knowledge into the vault before. Everything. Everything being total war, betrayal, political collapse, and lots of exploding friendships. Yes. I have to say, Elias replied, glancing sideways at her, your family reunions must be wild. That earned him the barest twitch of her lip. There are no reunions. Then we're overdue for one. Sierra stopped. So did Elias with a nervous half-step and a raised brow. Her eyes, so often sharp, unreadable, looked less certain now, like she was balancing between two equally dangerous ledges. She recognized my DNA, she said, but she also labeled me as modified. Elias blinked. You mean like upgraded? Altered? Oh, well, who hasn't been genetically nudged a bit these days? I've had nanite therapy to cure space allergies. Can't sneeze in zero-G. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. This wasn't therapeutic, it was designed. He frowned, seriousness creeping past the jokes. Sierra, what does that mean for you? I don't know, she looked away. But I suspect my creation was not entirely natural, perhaps not even accidental. Elias tried to process that, tried and failed. All he could manage was, you're still you. Still the woman who's been saving my reckless butt since landing on this rock. I am not just that, she said quietly. Of course not. You're also the woman who nearly dislocated my shoulder during a training drill and called it a learning opportunity. She blinked slowly. Your posture has improved since. You say that like it wasn't from sheer terror. They moved on. The terrain changed, flattening into stretches of dark mineral that pulsed faintly beneath their feet. Subsurface energy flows, Sierra had explained once, leftover veins from planetary engineering attempts thousands of years ago. Elias tried not to think about walking across a powered-up alien planet's nervous system. Too metaphorical, too easy to imagine it twitching. An hour later they crested a ridge and saw it, the extraction site. A relay beacon flickered in the sand, and just beyond it, a parked human dropship bearing the insignia of Alliance diplomatic operations. It was early. Finally, Elias muttered, civilization, synthetic coffee, soap. But Sierra didn't move. He turned to see her face unreadable again, not cold, not distant, guarded. They're early, she said. Probably just eager to debrief us. Or monitor us. Elias squinted toward the ship. You think this is about the pod? No, she said, it's about us. He blinked. Us, or mission partners who joked about marriage us. Both. She stepped forward. He followed, trying to suppress the growing churn in his stomach. At the base of the beacon, 4 figures waited, 2 in human uniforms, 2 in Elari robes. That was a bad sign. Diplomatic joint retrievals only happened when things had gotten awkward at high levels. They approached. The Elari emissary, a thin man with angular features and the subtle disdain of someone who'd never crawled through magnetic sand in his life, spoke first. Commander Velshara, Corporal Wren, you are instructed to report for immediate separate debriefings. Elias raised a hand. Define separate. The human officer answered. By order of Command Council, all cross-cultural relationship indicators must be assessed before continuation of duty. Sierra's hand tensed at her side. Relationship indicators, Elias repeated. So, What, because we didn't kill each other, they think we're in love? Because you didn't kill each other, the officer said blandly. And because you attempted to register a ceremonial bonding code at the relay terminal 2 days ago. Elia's jaw dropped. Wait, that console had a ceremonial bonding function. I thought I was requesting food supplies. Sierra's voice was flat. You submitted the wrong code. I was hungry. The Elari emissary cleared his throat. Your actions have created diplomatic interest. Therefore, a formal statement must be made to both governments declaring the nature of your bond, real or not. So basically, Elia said, we need to either deny it completely or get married. Silence. Then Sierra turned to him, expression unreadable. It would resolve the ambiguity. You're not seriously considering. Why not? Because it was a joke. I mean mostly, partly. A nervous joke that spiraled way out of control. She studied him, then say no. Elia stared. He couldn't. He wanted to, but the word lodged in his throat like an insult. She was standing there giving him a choice, something she never gave lightly. He glanced at the officers, then back at her. I can't say no. Sierra's gaze softened. The emissary spoke again. Then we will proceed with official rights. A statement will be logged. Elias threw his arms in the air. Can we at least rehearse this fake marriage first? No need, Sierra said calmly. I have memorized the Elari bonding procedures. Of course you have. The human officer coughed. You're aware this is highly irregular. Elias grinned. Buddy, everything about the last 48 hours has been highly irregular. The emissary sighed. Then let it be recorded, the bond is accepted. Sierra leaned in slightly. You understand this changes nothing. Except everything. A pause, then unexpectedly she said, I never joke. Elias gave her a sideways look. Good thing I do enough for both of us. The ceremony, such as it was, took place in the multi-purpose room of the Alliance dropship, a compartment usually reserved for prisoner processing or overflow cargo. Now it had been reconfigured with diplomatic banners, flickering softly under dimmed lights, and an officiator drone buzzing overhead like a confused metallic bee, unsure whether it was conducting a union or overseeing a trade agreement. It asked for biometric scans, verbal confirmations, and at one point a dance sequence that Elias swore was a mistranslation of a traditional vow. Sierra performed each step with the same precision she used in combat. Calm, unflinching, dangerously graceful. Elias followed along like a backup dancer trying not to trip over his own boots, whispering quips under his breath. If I survive this, he muttered, I want a real wedding next time. One with cake and chairs. Sierra raised an eyebrow as she pressed her hand against the biometric plate. There may not be a next time. Wow, romantic. It is an Elari tradition to speak plainly. Well, it's a human tradition to stress-eat pastries and yell at relatives, so we may have some cultural blending ahead. Noted. Once the final sequence completed, the drone gave a cheerful chirp and spun in a celebratory circle. Bonding confirmed, it announced. Legal recognition pending cross-council review. Congratulations or condolences may now be extended. Elias blinked. Wait, pending. I just married a woman with a kill count higher than my IQ, and it might not even be official. It is official where it matters, Sierra said. Your heart. My command files. Close enough. They were granted temporary quarters during the diplomatic review, which, conveniently, would take about a week. Apparently, if you accidentally enter a legally binding cross-species relationship during an off-world operation, both governments need time to determine if it was a lapse in judgment or the start of a scandal. Elias sprawled out on the cot in their assigned room, modular, sterile, and precisely 2 shades grayer than a prison cell. Sierra sat nearby, reassembling her weapon with serene focus, though her gaze occasionally flicked toward him as if trying to decide whether his sighs were tactical signals or just dramatic flair. I still don't know if you're mad at me or impressed, he said finally. Sierra didn't look up. You are adaptable, that is useful. Useful, we're married now. Can't I at least be tolerable? She paused. You are more than tolerable. Elias blinked. Well, that's practically a love poem. I can recite one if you wish. No, I mean later, probably, yes. He leaned back against the wall, staring at the ceiling. Everything that had happened in the last few days crashed over him like an overdue gravity wave. The mission, the vault, the proposal that wasn't, the union that was. And through it all her, Sierra, quiet, watchful, unpredictable, but always there. You know, he said after a long pause, before I met you I thought loyalty was about orders. Following chain of command, doing your duty, staying alive just long enough to get reassigned. But then, I don't know. You make it feel like loyalty means something bigger. She looked at him then. It does. To what? To someone. Elias swallowed, suddenly very aware of the silence between them, not cold but weighted, alive. So what happens now? He asked. She considered. We return, report, await further instruction. He frowned, and after that, there will be options, such as joint operations, extended integration, possibly reassignment. To where? Anywhere, she said simply, even. Together. Sierra stood, stepped forward, and held out her hand. If you wish. He took it, standing with her. You're sure? I was waiting for that. They stared at each other, laughter bubbling between the silence and the uncertainty. Elias grinned. Still not a joke. Sierra tilted her head. Not this time. 2 days later, clearance was granted. The bonding was officially recognized. The story spread faster than either of them wanted. Human soldier accidentally marries Elari commander was apparently too good a headline to ignore. Memes were created. Quotes were misattributed. Someone even started a betting pool on whether they'd survive their honeymoon. Elias had no intention of taking a honeymoon. Not yet. He